I've got a new charger here in the State of Charge Garage, and you know what that means? It's review time. Today I will be reviewing the Lectron Nexus 48 amp electric vehicle charger. This unit is actually available in either a hardwired 48 amp version, which we'll be reviewing here today, and also a plug-in NEMA 1450 version that can put out 40 amps. You could also order either versions with either the J1772 or NACS connector. We're going to be using the 48 amp hardwired version here with the NACS connector for this review. Now this is the second generation electric vehicle charger from Lectron. They actually make a whole line of portable charging equipment and adapters, but I'm talking about the hardwired wall-mounted units. Their first generation was called the V-Box. I reviewed the V-Box about 3 years ago. I wasn't overly impressed with that unit, and I didn't add it to my recommended charger list. But Lectron promises that this second generation is going to impress me. So I'm going to put it through all our usual tests here. I'll do the usual cold weather testing, extreme heat tests, connector drop tests, automatic restart tests, and then we'll see what the ChargerRater scorecard gives it as a final score. All that to help you decide if this is the charger that you want hanging on the wall of your garage. Let's get into it. All right, let's see what we have here. First up is the unit. It's actually the same size and shape of Lectron's first generation, the V-Box, but I can tell it's more robust. One of the things I commented on was that the V-Box felt a little flimsy. This feels like it's much thicker plastic. This is plastic. It does have a plastic outer shell, but it feels a lot heavier and more durable. There is a metal heat sink on the back, but the rest of the outer casing is plastic, but definitely feels quality, unlike the first gen where it just felt cheap and it felt like it wasn't made to withstand the elements and so forth. But this does, so good step one. We've got the hardwired version here, as you can see here. So they give you the dongle here where you'd connect that for your power. It's got a 23-foot cable, which is nice and thin. I measured it to 14.7 millimeters, so it's nice and thin. That should help it in our cold weather testing. Should perform well, but we'll see. It's not only about the thickness. I mentioned I had it with the NACS connector. It also gives you a little plug for the end of the cap on the NACS connector. That's rare. You see that a lot on J1772 chargers, but not necessarily on the NACS chargers. You usually don't get that. It's a good idea to use this plug if you're not going to holster the connector in between use, because you don't want dust and dirt and water or whatever to get in there. If you holster it, it's fine, then you don't need this. But I like that they supply you with this because the other NACS connectors on the chargers typically don't. Okay, so that's the unit here. Okay, the connector holster and cable management, it's kind of like a two-piece. It's interesting what Lectron's done because they sell this with the J1772 and also the NACS. This part of the connector holster and cable management is universal. Then they give you this piece here, depending whether you have the NACS, which I have, or the J1772. And this gets put over here, you line up the holes, and that's how it gets mounted on the wall. So you can either use this with the J1772 or NACS. Lectron doesn't have to make a whole new unit. They could just mass produce these and then make these. So that's pretty good. They also give you the 4 screws and drywall anchors for this itself. It has those 4 screws. You've got 4 screws here for the mounting bracket, which is here. This gets mounted on the wall like this. They give you a mounting template for it. An interesting thing is this is a sticker. Usually it's just a piece of paper, but you could stick this on the wall and then drill your 4 holes and use the anchors. Like what happens with most charging equipment, they kind of give you, in my opinion, undersized flimsy screws and drywall anchors. I don't love those. I probably wouldn't use those myself. I would get something a little bit beefier. You want your charger to be installed very securely to the wall, particularly if you're not screwing directly into studs. You know, if you're just going into drywall, I probably wouldn't use this type of drywall anchor. I'd do something a little bit better, but that's up to you. And finally, so I thought this was an owner's manual, but it's not. This is happening more and more. It's fine. There's a QR code on the back that you scan, and that takes you to a page with the owner's manual. It's probably better than printing up, thousands of these things that people look at once when they install it and then never use it. You've got 2 screws here because that is how you attach the mounting bracket. The mounting bracket gets mounted on the wall like here, and you can see there's 2 hooks on the top. The unit kind of hooks onto it. I'll show you here. The unit kind of hooks on, and it hangs on the top. And then on the bottom here, there's 1 screw. They give you 2, I guess, in case you drop one, but this gets put into here and tightened up once it's on the wall, and that's how it gets attached to the wall. Seems like a simple, straightforward installation. And these screws here, you need an Allen key for them. So I guess it's kind of like a security thing. They don't want to give a regular screw because somebody then could just take it and steal it. Like the thieves don't have Allen keys, but all the companies do that. It's pretty funny. So, all right, well, that's it for the unboxing. Before we get into the review, let's take a look at the Lectron Nexus's key features. The Lectron Nexus costs $399, and that's for all 4 versions of it. Whether it's the hardwired 48 amp version with J1772 or NACS, or the NEMA 1450 40 amp unit with either of those connectors, the price is consistent. It's $399. The dimensions are 13 inches by 8.75 inches by 3.5 inches. The hardwired version is a 48 amp charger that can deliver up to 11.5 kilowatt. There is also a 40 amp version that can deliver 9.6 kilowatt with a NEMA 1450 plug. The power output is not adjustable. We're going to talk about that later. It comes with a 23-foot cable. That's a thin cable. It's only 14.7 millimeter in diameter. You have J1772 and NACS connector options. The outer enclosure is made of high-strength polycarbonate, and it has an IP66 enclosure weatherproof rating, which is equivalent to NEMA 4. The operating temperature is negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit to 122 degrees Fahrenheit. The unit is Energy Star rated. It comes with a standard 3-year warranty, and it is made in China. So it's time to install the Lectron Nexus. Now, if you order the NEMA 1450 unit, obviously you're just going to plug it into a NEMA 1450 outlet and you're good to go. But if you got the 48 amp hardwired unit, like I have here, now you need to hardwire it. And Lectron provides you with this 2-foot long cord so that you can just connect the 3 wires inside a junction box. Now, I'm a little conflicted, and I'll tell you why. On one hand, I like the fact that the wires are connected inside the unit and torqued to the right torque specifications. That's really important, that your power feed going into the charger is torqued properly. In fact, Tesla, even inside their unit, has the proper torque rating printed next to the connections, so you can't miss it. It tells you torque this to this rating. But Lectron and some other manufacturers take that out of the equation and say, we're going to connect it inside to the circuit board because we don't want customers inside the unit, and they give you this connection. But then you have to connect this inside a junction box. And I don't love that type of installation because it's just another potential failure point. Matter of fact, I just did a recharge rescue up in Washington State where the exact situation was the case. The customer had a ChargePoint Home Flex and had it wired to a junction box just below the charger, and the connections loosened up and melted, and he almost had a fire in his house. I much prefer hardwired installations to be a home run from your service panel directly into the unit and connection. You're eliminating the potential problems along the route. Of course, you could still have problems if you don't connect the wires correctly, if you don't use the right size wire, but you're eliminating problems between your service panel and the charger. But with Lectron, they don't want you to do that. Now, you could remove this wire, which I'm going to show you really quickly. But to do so, what you need to do is remove 11 screws on the back of the unit. And over 2 of the screws, there are stickers that say the warranty is voided if you remove these stickers. Now, the only way to get inside the box is to remove the stickers, is to unscrew the screws that are behind those stickers and open the case up, which I did. But understand, if you want to do a direct hardwire, you're going to be voiding your 3-year warranty. That's unfortunate. I kind of wish Lectron didn't do that because I think having a direct connection is better. So let's take a look inside. Now, typically, when there are lights on the cover, there's always wire connection. You can usually unplug it. You can't here. Lectron has actually glued the connection on both ends, well, primarily because they don't want somebody inside the box to begin with. But I can't remove that now because it's actually glued together. So we're going to have to take a look at it gingerly. So right here is where we have the 3 wires that connect the power. So what you would do is have to remove, or have your licensed electrician remove these 2 screws here, remove the screws up there, and then directly hardwire it. Not a hard job for an electrician. The only problem is there is no proper torque rating listed here, and I don't even know if Lectron provides that information. It's not in the owner's manual. So the electrician would have to make an educated guess, which we don't like doing, somewhere probably, around 40 to 50 pound-feet of torque. I'm not sure. So I'm going to probably tell people not to do that and go with what Lectron has supplied here and just install this in a junction box and do it properly. Make sure you use good connectors and torque those properly. Put it inside a metal box, better off than a plastic one, and go that way. So, but if you did want to remove this, that's how you do it. You're going to come right in there and land the 3 wires. So it's pretty simple, straightforward installation. I will talk to Lectron about their decision to not have customers open this up. I'm sure it's a quality decision that they want it done safely. And we have a lot of self-install people. Unfortunately, you should always get a licensed electrician, and I think Lectron maybe is afraid that someone's going to, directly wire this and then not connect the connections properly. Then all of a sudden there's a fire and they're blaming the charger. This way, if there's a failure and it's in the junction box, you can't blame Lectron. So I think Lectron was a little CYA with this, but that's how it's set up. All right, so other than that, let's take a look inside the box. Very well made unit this is. And I can say that with experience because Lectron invited me to their factory that builds this unit in China 2 months ago, and I was able to see the whole process. Lectron even makes their own circuit boards, which is highly unusual in this industry. The factory that assembles this charger makes the circuit boards there specifically to Lectron's specifications. And I talked to CEO Chris Maywald about this, and he wanted to make sure I knew the extent the company went to in order to make it comply to OEM standards, that auto manufacturing standards, which go above and beyond what a lot of the other charging equipment manufacturers to. That's why he invited me to come over to take a look at their processes, their testing procedures. They do a lot of things kind of like what I do: deep freeze tests, extreme heat tests, water intrusion tests, drop tests, shake tests, a vibration test, which I thought was interesting because once I opened this up, when I took these 11 screws out, which I have here, I noticed that they all have a thread lock on the screws, which I'm not sure I've ever seen before on the outer casing of a charger, so that even with vibrations, they won't loosen up and the cover won't loosen up. They also has a really good gasket here. It's a thick gasket that's really embedded into the unit. Now, that's one of the things I commented on when I reviewed Lectron's V-Box, their first generation wall-mounted charger. The gasket I felt was kind of flimsy, and the case itself overall wasn't that strong, the plastic. I could bend the cover easily. This cover is, I mean, if I really crank on it, I can torque it a little bit, but this is a much better cover and case than what Lectron had in their first generation units. So they've definitely improved that. Overall, the robust construction of this is much better than their first generation unit. I think Lectron's come a long way over the last 4 or 5 years. I think they're, whereas when they first came out, they were a new company making electric vehicle charging equipment adapters. I think it was kind of like, let's be a price play, but that's not the case anymore. Lectron now is one of the more established brands that isn't the lowest price necessarily, but they're aiming to get top tier quality. And that transition has happened over the last couple of years. I've noticed that with all of the products that they make, they're much better quality than what they were just 3 years ago. So I'd much prefer that policy where charge a little bit more, but put out high quality equipment that's going to last long. This case is definitely better. It's higher quality than their first generation charger. You could feel it. You could even see the quality inside. And I learned a lot when I went and walked their assembly line about how everything was double checked. And, they had multiple checks along the production line as the charger was being built to make sure that it was top quality and it would meet OEM standards. I think, Lectron sells their adapters to almost all the major brands right now. If you have a OEM supplied adapter like a NACS to CCS or a CCS to NACS adapter that your OEM supplied you with, chances are Lectron made it. They make like 90% of them for the industry. And working with these companies to talk through their engineers with manufacturing standards and how robust the products need to be, because a car manufacturer will not put its name on a product you make unless their engineers have thoroughly checked it. I think they wanted to do the same with the charger. I think they were hoping that maybe some of the OEMs might white label this as their brand, which a lot of car companies do. EV sellers, they'll offer a charger if you want to buy it through the parts department with their name on it, but it's just rebranded that another company has made. So I think that might be what Lectron was hoping to do down the road with this unit. So they built it extremely tough that would pass the standards of OEMs. So that's what it looks like inside. As far as installing, let's get the wall mount on the wall and hang it up and then power it up. All right, so now let's install the unit. I already put the mounting bracket here on the wall as well as the connector, holster, and cable management. And you simply hook the unit on the top and then use one of the 2 screws that they provide you with the Allen wrench that they give you to secure it on the bottom. Let me see how well this works out because it's a little tight under here. Let me see if I can get this in right. There, I think I got it. Yep. So I'm just gonna tighten it enough now just to hold it. Of course, I dropped the Allen key, so we're done with that. And then you're going to connect your power. So this unit is a 48 amp charger. Now it needs to be installed on a 60 amp circuit. Please have a licensed qualified electrician do that. Pull a permit, have it inspected to make sure everything is right. I really want to make sure everything's done properly inside that junction box. A lot of power is going to be passing through that. Let me put the cable up here on the connector holster. That's why I always advocate for having a licensed qualified electrician do your EV charging work, and it's part of the reason why I've partnered with Qmerit. Let me take the cap off and that locks in. The connector holster also has like a little locking tab on the bottom here. It's interesting. Usually you don't see that. Although I did notice if you pull it hard enough, it will just pop it out. But it is good so that if somebody just knocks against it, it won't knock it off the wall. But going back to installing it, that's one of the reasons why I partnered with Qmerit. The Qmerit network of electric vehicle charging equipment installers knows all best practices. They do things right. And I always recommend using somebody from the Qmerit network or a licensed qualified electrician that really specializes in EV charging equipment. I've done recharge rescue episodes where I go to people's houses and fix their EV charging circuit problems that were done by electricians that just didn't follow best practices for electric vehicle charging equipment. A lot of power passes through this circuit for many continuous hours, more than anything else in the house. If everything isn't done exactly right, you have big problems. And that's something that I want to talk about really quickly with this unit in particular, the Lectron Nexus. If you notice, when I had the unit open, there's no internal dip switch to derate the power like many EV chargers have, not all of them. So this unit has no ability to dial down its power. So if you were to install this on a circuit that was less than a 60 amp dedicated circuit, now you shouldn't do that anyway because it's a 48 amp capable charger. But when people have a charger that can deliver, let's say 48 amps like this can, and their power in their house can't supply a dedicated 60 amp circuit, they might put it on a lower amperage circuit and then dial down the power inside the unit if it has an internal dip switch. And by that happening, the unit will never deliver more power than what that circuit can provide. Some EV chargers also have apps that let you do it inside the app and dial down the power. Some have both. I really like it when there's both, when there's a hard limit inside the unit, and then you could also adjust the power inside the app. The Lectron Nexus has neither. This will always deliver 48 amps if your electric vehicle calls for 48 amps. Now, many electric vehicles today allow you to dial down the power inside the vehicle or inside the vehicle's app. So if you were to buy this and let's say you're going to hardwire it on a 40 amp circuit because that's all the power your home has, you would then be relying on your EV to lower the amperage. If you have an EV that can accept 48 amps and the EV cannot dial down the power either in the vehicle or in your app, this is not the right charger for you because the vehicle is always going to be calling for 48 amps. This will always try to deliver whatever the vehicle is calling for. There's no way to dial it down. Now, this is the first version of the Lectron Nexus. It's not a Wi-Fi connected smart charger. It's a quote unquote dumb charger, which a lot of people like. A lot of people don't want to deal with apps and anything like that. They said, I just want something that charges my EV. And there's definitely a big market for non-smart charging electric vehicle chargers. But by not having an app, now you can't dial down the power. So that's a little bit of a miss for Lectron, and it's going to get dinged in the ChargerRater for that. Lectron is coming out with another version of this charger, the Lectron Nexus Pro. It's going to be available in just a couple of months, I think Q3 of 2026. That's going to have, it's going to be a smart charger. It's going to have an app, the Lectron app. You'll be able to adjust the power inside the app. So if you're in a situation where you really like this unit, you want to buy it, but you can't supply dedicated 60 amp circuit, which this requires, and your EV can't dial down the power within it, like many EVs can't. They're going to call for the full amount of power on AC charging. There's nothing, you can't change that. My F-150 Lightning, for instance, I can't lower the amount of power that it asks for. It's always going to call for maximum power. So if you're in that situation and you like the Lectron Nexus, hold out for the Lectron Nexus Pro, which is going to be available in a couple of months. So I just want to talk about the fact that you cannot lower the output on the Lectron Nexus currently. So, okay, so I'm going to hook this up, power it up, and then we're going to get on with the review. We'll start with our cold weather testing. And it's time for our cold weather testing. I put the Lectron Nexus in this deep freeze freezer 24 hours ago. This unit here gets well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. I freeze the unit thoroughly. Then we're going to see how pliable the cable is. And we're also going to do a connector drop test to make sure the connector doesn't drop with 5 waist-high drops when it's frozen onto a concrete floor. So first, let's see how cold it is in there. Negative 12.5 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty cold. Now let's take the unit out. Okay, you can see I coiled the cable up into small loops. Now we will try to unfold it and see how easy it is to work with. We do this to simulate how the cable would be using it in the winter if you lived in a cold weather area and let's say you had the charger installed outside. You know, you're going to use this cable a lot. And if it's installed outside and you live in one of the northern states, you want it to be nice and flexible during the winter months. All right, let's see how it comes here. Let me get this out, okay. So, you can see it's nice and frozen. And once I unfoil it, it seems like it's willing to comply. Now, it's not perfect for a cable of this thickness, which is relatively thin. It should be a little bit more floppy than this. It's not bad. This is certainly workable. As you can see here, it's not hard to work with it, and you could coil it back up, put it over your connector holster, let's say, or the body of the unit. It is still retaining some of that small coil, so it's not going to get a top score, but it definitely passes, and it's acceptable for cold weather. Because the cable is as thin as it is, you can just kind of manhandle it, even if it seems like it wants to retain that coil. But it's not bad. Probably give it about a 3 out of 5 on the ChargerRater for cold weather compliance and how the cable is flexible in cold weather. Now we'll do the connector drop test. You can tell the connector's still frozen, still some ice on that. We're going to drop it 5 times from about waist high. I take the connector cap off. Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Looks fine, no damage. You know, these NACS connectors, I don't expect to have as frequent a failure as I do with the J1772 because they don't have the moving parts. They don't have that locking tab on the top. The tab is what seems to break more often than anything on the J1772 connectors. The NACS connectors are a slimmer, more compact design, and they don't have that locking mechanism that is a real potential point of failure. So no damage to the end of the connector. It seems fine. So the Lectron Nexus passes both the cable deep freeze test and the connector drop test. Next up, we're going to do the automatic restart test. With the automatic restart test, I plug an electric vehicle into the charger I'm reviewing, let it start charging, and then I shut off power to the circuit powering the charger. I'll wait a minute or so, then restore the power. What I want to see is that the charger re-engages the electric vehicle and continues charging it. Let's say there was a power outage over the night and your electric vehicle is charging. It can only be for a few seconds, but it's enough to shut the charger off, stop charging, and then power gets restored. What we want to see is that the charger re-engages the vehicle and continues charging it. What I've noticed in the past, more particularly in past years, a lot of the charging equipment remained in sort of like a fault state and didn't continue charging the vehicle. You'd wake up in the morning and your vehicle wasn't charged. Now that's not happening so much anymore, but I still like to test for this just to make sure that the charger will continue charging even if there's a temporary power outage. So I'm going to shut power off to the circuit now. You can see by the pulsating green lights, this is charging. I have my Chevy Bolt in the garage here and it's charging it. So let's kill power, then I'll restore it just to make sure that this works. Okay, I just restored power and it immediately started blinking green. I believe we're charging. The Bolt is showing on the dash that it's charging. So, okay, that was just about the fastest I've ever seen a charger re-engage and start charging again. It was like 2 seconds, but it doesn't matter if it's 2 seconds or 10 seconds, as long as it starts charging the EV again. I hear the fans turning on the Bolt, so the Bolt's charging. Lectron Nexus passes the automatic restart test. Next up is the extreme heat test. With the extreme heat test, I put a heat lamp on the chargers for 2 hours. I maintain a surface temperature at or above 120 degrees Fahrenheit. I do this to replicate if the charger was installed outside in a very hot climate area with the sun beating down on it. The units can get extremely hot. Then when you turn them on and start charging a car, they heat up from the inside because the current creates heat inside. So we want to make sure the unit can withstand extreme heat and continue to charge your car, providing the full power. So I've had the heat lamp on the unit for 2 hours now. I'm going to plug in, I have a Chevy Bolt, 2027 Chevy Bolt behind me here, that can accept 48 amps. We'll charge it for 2 hours. I'll leave the heat lamp on the unit. It's going to get really hot by the end of that. And we'll just make sure that it can handle the heat and deliver the full power. So right now, there's a surface temperature of 135.5 degrees. It's been over 120 degrees for a solid 2 hours. So I'm sure it's baked all the way through. Let's plug in the Bolt now. I'll charge it for 2 hours. I'll monitor the charging rate. The Bolt lets me see in its display screen how much power it's accepting, and we'll make sure that it delivers the full 48 amps for 2 consecutive hours. Let's plug it in. Okay, 2 hours later, and the Lectron Nexus has been delivering full 48 amps to the Bolt for the entire 2 hours. The surface temperature is cooking. We're at 147 degrees now. And I was particularly curious to see how the Nexus handled the extreme heat test, because when I did the extreme heat test on Lectron's first gen unit, the V-Box, the cover partially melted. It warped from the extreme heat. And that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about how the first unit I didn't feel was built very well. It wasn't a robust enclosure. This handled it without a problem. 2 hours baking in the heat. It's been up close to 150 degrees now for the last hour. I've been checking. So should be able to handle pretty much any heat that you can throw at it. And again, I love the fact that it's got this 1/2 inch gap in the back, and I could even feel the heat coming out of it from the back. And if there's any kind of wind, you're going to get some wind blowing through that, really keep it nice and cool. So well designed by Lectron. I like that heat sink in the back and the fact that the charger isn't pressed up against the wall. That bodes well for this in extremely hot conditions. All right, so I've been using the Lectron Nexus now for a little over 3 weeks to charge a variety of electric vehicles. I used it, as you saw here today, with the Chevy Bolt that I have on loan. I charged my Ford F-150 Lightning, my Rivian R1S, my Chevrolet Equinox EV. I even charged a friend's Tesla Model Y with it. Never had an issue. Delivers the full power as long as you need it to. And that's one of the things that we talked about in the video that I'm not happy with the unit, is the fact that you can't dial down the power. You have to rely on the vehicle to do that. And that's honestly the biggest miss for the Lectron Nexus in my eyes, is that you cannot lower the power output, which we'll get into a little bit later. But let's talk about some of the positives. So huge improvement over their first generation product, the Lectron V-Box. In my opinion, it's a totally different unit. It's not just next generation. It was as if they didn't even use anything from the first gen and just designed a whole new unit. Now, the shape is the same basically, but everything is different on it. Different circuit board. As I mentioned, Lectron makes the circuit board themselves now in the factory. Different casing. Even has a power off button on the side here. If you need to reboot the unit, you can press that. The cable's much better, much thinner, much more compliant when it's frozen than the original cable is. Now I notice it doesn't have a display screen. The original V-Box up here was a little small LED display screen. I talked to Lectron about that, and they said the feedback they got from their users was that they didn't want it. They didn't want display screen displaying this information while their car was charging. Many times these are located in public view, and they just want to have people said they, number one, didn't really look at it, and number two, didn't like the fact that other people could see it, so they dropped that entirely. Now, which I'm fine with completely, but if you're not going to have some sort of a display screen, I think you should have that available in an app. So the user can look at the power output, the line voltage, things like that, stuff that you want to see when your EV is charging. And since this is the base model, it doesn't have the Wi-Fi connectivity with the app. Now, they are coming out with the Pro version of this unit in about 2 months. I'm going to get an early version of one. I'm going to review it when it comes out. So it's everything this has and more. Plus you get the app and all the connectivity features and all that. So that is probably going to be an interesting unit to look at, because the base of this unit is very good in my opinion. With the exception of that one real miss with not having adjustable power output, hard coated inside on some type of dip switch or dial. That's the only real miss that I can come out with this. They improved the unit entirely. It has better warranty. The first generation V-Box had a 1-year warranty. This has a standard 3-year warranty, as long as you don't open the case. But that's a big step up from first gen as far as I'm concerned. I'm looking forward to testing out the Pro. Okay, with that said, the only thing we have left now is scoring. So let's go to the ChargerRater and see how well the unit did on that. In the cost and value category, it got 4 points for cost because the unit cost $399.99, made it just under that $400 limit. It has a 3-year warranty, so it gets 3 points. And as far as value goes, I'm going to give it a point there because I think it's a good value for what you get and what it costs. It finishes up the cost and value category with 23 points. Very good in that category. For power and construction, it gets no points for max charging power because it delivers 48 amps. For adjustable power, it's going to lose 2 points there because you can't adjust the power for this unit. It's always going to try to put out 48 amps. For cable length, it gets 1 point because there's a 23-foot cable. For connector, I'm going to actually give it a 4 out of 5 for this. I like this connector, and this NAX connector that's on this is made by Lectron in that factory. It's got a good feel to it, and I like that they give you a little cap to put on the end if you're not going to holster it. So it gets 4 out of 5. For connector holster, I'm also going to give it a 4 out of 5. For temperature sensor and plug, it doesn't get any points or it doesn't lose any points because this is the hardwired unit. But the NEMA 1450 plug-in unit does have a temperature sensor in the plug. So if I was reviewing that unit here, it would get 2 points there. It finishes up the power and construction category with 22 points. Okay, for testing, in the extreme cold weather testing, it's going to get 4 points. For extreme heat, no points because you don't get any points there. You can only lose points if the unit derates or shuts off. For the automatic restart test, it gets 1 point. Safety certified, no points because it is safety certified. You don't gain points there, you can only lose them. And for Energy Star certified, it gets a point. The unit is Energy Star certified. Finishes up the testing category with 21 points. And in the intelligence category, it's not going to get any points in any of the categories here. Let's go down the list. Smart charger with an app, it gets no points because it's not power share capable. It can't do intelligent load management. It doesn't have a solar charging option, and there is no access control. So 0 points all the way down the column. It finishes up the intelligence category with 15 points because that's the basis that all of the categories start off with. So when we total up the points of the 4 categories, the Lectron Nexus gets a total of 81 points. And when we convert that to a 5-star rating, it gets 4.05 stars out of 5. All right, so 4.05 stars out of 5. Not a bad score when you consider it got no points for the Wi-Fi connected intelligence category. I suspect the Pro version is going to do a little bit better because it's going to get some points in that area there. So, you know, it is what it is. It's not a smart charger. This is a quote-unquote dumb charger, which is what a lot of people want. A lot of my followers even tell me, I don't need it connected to Wi-Fi. I don't need an app. I just want the charger to charge my electric vehicle. I want it to be low cost, robust, last a long time, and just charge my EV. This is a consideration if that's what you want. You're not looking for any smart charging capability. You just want a robust unit that'll charge your electric vehicle and last a long time. This is a unit that you need to consider if that's the case, with one caveat. You have to be able to deliver the full 48 amps, which means you need to have 60 amps of available power, excess power in your service panel in order for me to recommend this unit, because you can't dial it down, and I don't want to rely on the vehicle to lower the amperage. It's too easy to have that setting get changed by somebody and all of a sudden you're overdrawing your circuit. In many instances, that won't be a problem because people will be able to have a 60 amp dedicated circuit, which is what's required for a 48 amp charger with the 80% continuous load rule. But if you can't, if you're looking to install a 32 or 40 amp circuit and rely on your vehicle, I wouldn't recommend this unit. I'd wait until the Pro version comes out. With the app, I'm guessing you'll be able to lower the power output. But if you can have a full power 60 amp circuit, this definitely should be something that you consider if you're not looking for a Wi-Fi connected smart charger. Okay, I will drop a link in the description of this video if you want to purchase this unit. And the only thing that's left now is to look at my hits and misses for the Lectron Nexus. Okay, we'll start off with the hits. First up is the robust construction. Lectron told me it set out to make an OEM grade engineered charger, and I believe it accomplished that. Second hit is good price for $399.99. I think it's a good value. And finally, even though I didn't review that version of this charger here today, the plug-in NEMA 1450 version has temperature sensors in it to prevent overheating at the outlet and a potential fire risk, which we've seen with these low quality NEMA 1450 outlets. I like that Lectron included that in their plug-in version. And for the misses, my number one complaint about the Lectron Nexus is that it cannot lower its output amperage. There should be a dial or a switch or something inside that allows you to lower that amperage output so you won't overdraw a circuit. The way it's set up now, you have to install this on a 60 amp circuit. You can't rely on the vehicle to draw less. That's just asking for trouble. My second miss is that it doesn't have any type of intelligent power management or power sharing capability. More and more of the high quality electric vehicle charging equipment coming to market today has those features. And finally, the unit doesn't have any type of access control. A lot of people have to install their chargers outside of their garage, on the side of their house or somewhere near their driveway, and anybody could just roll up and plug in and charge their EV. There's no way to temporarily turn it off other than going inside and like shutting off the circuit breaker or installing a switch in the circuit to do that. Most electric vehicle charging equipment today has some sort of access control to prevent unauthorized use. All right, well, that's it for the Lectron Nexus review. Now, this is my full-length review. If you've come this far, you probably have already watched everything. But if you didn't, if you just fast forwarded to the end, because my reviews are long, and they are very long. They're comprehensive, but they're long. In about a week, I'm going to put out my quick charge version of this review. It takes this review and compresses it to 10 minutes. So you get all the information in 10 minutes. And that follows up usually a week or two after I post my long version comprehensive review of my EV charging equipment. Look for that in about a week or two if you didn't watch this whole video. If you watched the whole video, I guess you don't need to watch the compressed version. But if you just skip to the end to hear my ratings and you want to get a little bit more but not watch an hour-long video, maybe my quick charge review videos are the ones for you to look out for. And if this is your first time here at State of Charge, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any upcoming electric vehicle news and reviews. And as always, thanks for watching.